Thanks again for joining us. As you know, this is part of a series of digital events meant to support our business community. We're actually trying to provide value to everyone that's involved into the business, especially B2B type of business, and most of them are technology businesses. We have a business support group on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and we have many people that have registered to this series of digital events. Today, we are very fortunate to have Ken from APEAK Solution and Chad from Scale X AI. We're going to tackle a subject on how to accelerate sales during and after this current crisis. And from the very interesting questions we got from the participants prior to this session, I know that everybody's waiting for quite a few answers to questions that you have these days. I'm just going to let Ken introduce himself and Chad, and we're going to interact again by the end of this session. Ken, take it away, please.
Great, thanks, Loredana. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, and a pleasure being part of this group. And thank you, Loredana, for inviting Greg and myself to join. A few weeks ago, we did a presentation on outsourcing, and Greg delivered most of that. So we're going to switch roles today, and I'm going to be the lead presenter along with my friend and guest, Chad Burmeister, who I'll introduce in a second. So APEAK Solutions is a marketing technology solutions consulting company. We work with companies to help them support and maintain their business growth through marketing technology services, working with primarily HubSpot, Pardot, Salesforce, Marketing Cloud. And we also have, our team has a lot of experience, so we help companies, with sales engagement and other processes to help their businesses grow. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ken. Greg Corson, and I am in beautiful sunny New Hampshire, not too far from the Atlantic Ocean, not far from Boston. And Ken and Loredana and I run APEAK Solutions, and we have a long-standing relationship with Chad, and we have been very thankful for being invited to do this today, and to have met many of you previously on our earlier presentation. So thanks to everyone who's joining today, and whatever channel you are viewing. We look forward to knowing you, and thanks very much, Loredana, for the platform. Ken, it is back to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Greg. So we do have some slides to present, but we also want this to be an interactive presentation. So feel free to ask questions on the chat pane as we're going. And depending on how time goes, we may stop and answer them as we go. Or if it works out better, we may wait to the end to the Q&A session. Either way, we will see your questions and we'll be glad to address them. That's part of the great atmosphere of these discussions that we've had, that they've been interactive and we all can learn from each other. But I'm very happy to have our guest, introduce our guest speaker, Chad Burmeister. Chad is a consummate sales professional, and I say it in a good way. And Chad and I have known each other for a number of years. We actually once worked for competing companies. I was with Connect Leader, who's has a sales engagement automation platform, and Chad worked with Connect and Sell, who had a directly competitive business. And but we both have been active in the Inside Sales Association, and still are to this day. And Chad has a real interesting company. He helps companies power and accelerate their sales processes. And I'll let Chad introduce himself here for a few minutes, and then he'll explain more as we go.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't think I've ever been on a webinar with someone as cool of name as Loredana. So I'm jealous that you have such a cool name. And my great-grandparents are from Germany. So my parents have visited the farm back in Germany. I have not yet made that trek. So I'm looking forward to it. And if you ask me to speak German, I can probably count to 3, and that's about it. But I really do enjoy my trips to Germany. Well, I haven't been to Germany. I've been to Italy. I've been to UK. I've been all over Europe in a lot of places, but not yet Germany. So hopefully now that we're connected with this audience, when we make our trek after our kids get out of high school, my son just graduated, my daughter graduates in a year. I'd love to make a trip around the world with my wife, and maybe I could come say hello to some of the folks on this call. So thanks for having me today. I'm really looking forward to sharing. I wrote the book on AI for sales over the last year, and I interviewed 21 different CEOs, chief data scientists, people with a higher pay grade than myself, to understand how they leverage artificial intelligence in their sales motions, both inside their own products as well as how they work with customers to implement artificial intelligence. So we like to think of ScaleX as one of the leading providers of AI for sales. We're just coming out with a new website in July, and I'll test the tagline here. We're planning on 2 words: delightfully human. So AI for sales is all about making the human better, faster, smarter, so that you can build more pipeline and sell more in a shorter period of time. And today, as we present, we'll go through 3 very, very quick ways to deploy AI that can generate a ton of pipeline. So I'm really looking forward to digging in, and I thank you all for having me today.
All right, Chad, great. Yeah, so when I was at Connect Leader, I was their director of marketing, and when we first were there, they had one tool called Team Dialer, which accelerated the calling process. And over the couple of years, we added a number of features, one which was artificial intelligence. They used it for developing and filtering lists based on past behavior. So it was kind of at the very leading edge of the movement. Things have come a long way. I mean, Connect Leader has definitely expanded their products. Inside sales is now Zant, which I still am trying to wrap my hand around. And the market is continually changing. But today's conversation is more about how sales acceleration can help companies, and more about process and less about products. So let's move on. So we're going to be talking about surviving the recession, and it's hopefully we're coming at we're starting to head out of it, and we all hope that the V is this pattern that we're going to be taking, not a U or something else like an L, with the recovery, that things will bounce back quick. But it's been a tough few months for folks, and we've had conversations with lots of our clients and prospects, and a lot of people are kind of waiting to see what happens. And is that a good strategy or not? So it's one of the things we're going to discuss, and we're going to learn and discuss what is sales velocity, and why is that so important to the sales process. Not just a matter of building that pipeline, but how fast can you get these deals through the pipeline. It's really important, and I'm not sure a lot of people understand it. I don't think it's taught in business school. So that's something we'll be getting into, and then talk about some of the tools involved and in sales velocity, and then what's the difference between marketing automation and sales engagement and sales automation. And I throw that in because I'm a marketing guy primarily. I just happen to have worked for a sales engagement company, so I'm familiar with it. But I just wanted to throw some definitions in so everybody's on the same path. So then when we launch into discussion with Chad, we're all on the same ballpark. So this is a quote from Chad's book. In sales, time kills deals. In modern sales, AI kills time. And it's true, right? I mean, if you get companies in the sales process, you want to get them to be a customer as soon as possible. You know, I don't think too many people in B2B world can, you know, close the deal in the first day, but if you could, you would, right? And we know that, you know, the more expensive, the more sophisticated the process is, the longer it takes. And the bigger the company, the more people involved, and you get the idea, right? So if we can move the process along, you're going to get more sales and sales faster. And but a lot of it is attitude. And we've talked a lot about heroes these days, you know, the folks working in the front lines in the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, the grocery store attendants. We have one superhero here who has a different attitude toward it. So he's trying to help fight coronavirus by staying at home and doing nothing. But I think we all know that, you know, Superman isn't the person who does nothing. And I think we need to get him off the couch and get moving. So what's sales velocity all about? A great sales professional, somebody who both Greg and Loredana have interacted with quite a bit lately is Dan Tyre. Dan's a HubSpot director of sales. He was the sixth person hired at HubSpot and has launched several of his own companies. And he talks about you know, how every sales manager lives and feels their sales pipeline is a bunch of fluff. And right, you know, are those deals real or not? And but uncovering that sense of urgency and establishing a sales velocity is important. It uncovers a slow moving or even worse stagnant pipe. So HubSpot, you know, traditionally always focused on the sales funnel, right? Getting leads at the top, getting them down, qualifying for sales, and pushing it to customers. Well, last couple of years, they've updated that. And they really like this new model called the FLYWHEEL because it addresses the sales, the marketing, and the service processes, and it's focused around the customer. And velocity is what gets that flywheel moving. And the faster it moves, the faster your business grows. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, getting that sales process going. Now, for all you math folks out there, we're not going to be going into a calculus course or anything. But I did want to mention this is a formula. You can Google this and learn more about it online. There's a bunch of articles about in the sales press. It's called the sales velocity formula. And essentially, it's the number of opportunities you have in your pipeline times the size of the deal value, times the win rate, right? That gives you your sales quotient. And then divide that by the length of the sales cycle. So the important part of that formula is that length of sales cycle, or your denominator. And by affecting that, you affect the entire formula. So the shorter you can make that sales cycle, the faster you can get that opportunities and close those deals and increase that win rate. So.
And it's interesting on that topic. I've had very good sales trainers. Keenan would make this argument for sure, and he wrote the book called Gap Selling. He said you have to separate the discovery call from the demo presentation call. And traditionally, over the last 20 years of my sales career, early in the first 5 years, I was selling into enterprise, and of course, those calls were separated. In high velocity sales, when they're buying, let's say, 2 Ring Central phone lines or 4 WebEx meeting seats back 10 years ago, if you can do the discovery call and do the business discussion while the CEO's on the call, you can collapse what could be 2 weeks of back and forth down to 1 30-minute conversation and close. Right. And so it's always interesting when someone takes a firm stance that, no, you have to separate the two. I think it varies, right? Certainly in an enterprise sale of $1 million deal, you might not be able to do discovery and close in half an hour, but
but you're right in getting the folks involved and getting to that opportunity as fast as possible. We talked yesterday when we were prepping, and it's funny, the company I mentioned about doing the discovery first was Marin Software, who I know is your business partner, who had worked for in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But so Marin Software sells advertising software for large advertisers. And they do a huge amount of inbound marketing and digital advertising. And they were using an AI product called Conversica. And we were doing a kind of a joint story about them in Connect Leader. And what they told me was they want their sales development reps to talk to the leads they generate as soon as possible, right as they make the inquiry or it comes in from a trade show, and qualify them as soon as possible to either say, yes, they're in the process, or no. If they said no, then they would put them into a lead nurturing. Now, this is 180 degrees from the HubSpot methodology and a lot of the inbound marketing, where they say you got to create the conversation first. You have to, introduce yourself. You're at a cocktail party. They have to get to know you first. So that's a pretty common strategy, but I like the Marin aspect. And I know at Connect Leader, that was always our number one goal, was to get them on the phone with the salesperson, because we wanted to get that conversation started. And we did a lot more of that than we did a lead nurturing. And it seemed to work. So, so how do you increase sales velocity? Well, we can work harder, right? We had a discussion with some folks that we get together. Greg and I have some friends who are in the sales and marketing area in the local New England area. And one of the first discussions we had during the COVID crisis was it would take 10 times the number of conversations to get the same number of deals during this crisis. So how do you get those 10 times work? Well, can you work 10 times harder? I guess you can, but if you have a family at home and you have other things going on, it may be pretty tough to get those numbers. You can hire more salespeople or hire an outsourced services, and that's always great, but that's not always practical when funds are tight. But the one thing you can do is you can automate your process. And there are lots of tools and lots of different platforms, and we'll go over some of the different options in a second. But that can work no matter what your budget is. And that may help you get closer and then get things going. Then maybe when you get to the scale, then you can start bringing on more salespeople or using outside services like Chad's to help you accelerate.
Ken, I would almost add a number 5 here, because having worked with so many companies throughout the last 8 to 10 weeks, I see maybe 30 to 40% of the companies based on their industry are going down, right? If they're in restaurant hospitality, that's a 39% unemployment rate in America right now. That's a problem. So if you're selling into restaurant and hospitality and you're a software company, that's going to be a difficult sales pitch. What some companies have been able to do, and there's I challenge a couple of thoughts here. There's an apparel line manufacturer. They were hit very, very hard also, right? If you're building apparel and you can't go shopping at a mall to buy the apparel, well, that's down by 50%. So what this one company did is they completely retooled their apparel line to masks. And I think that's a pretty standard thing. A lot of other companies are following suit, but that's an obvious one. Another friend of mine is the CEO of a $5 million recruiting company for healthcare. And so they're not really recruiting in healthcare right now. So he had a 6-week pause where he was almost going to have to furlough some of his salespeople. And we had a conversation. I said, hey, they're pretty good on the phone, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, we have some campaigns that are very, very aggressive. They need good salespeople to talk on the telephone. Why don't we redeploy your folks during these 6 to 8 weeks or however long this takes to selling a different product for a while and on the phone and online. And then when the healthcare market comes back, you can, they can at least make money for half the day and they can still prospect into the healthcare account. So those were 2 unique retoolings. And so if your mindset is, oh man, my business is hurting, I would just encourage you to open up your mind and say, well, I'm alive. I'm a human. I can breathe. I can do whatever I want. So what else could you pivot to if it's 1 or 2 degrees away that could actually keep the lights on during these times? Something to think about.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, there's a lot of stories like that. I know that with the government support they're providing in the U.S. for the PPP program for hiring folks, that someone's mentioned that like the restaurants are hiring, they're brought their waiters back and they have them painting the restaurant just to keep them busy.
That's excellent. Love
Yeah.
that. Yes.
And it's funny, and you talked about the recruiting business, and I've talked to several folks in the recruiting companies who were exactly the same situation as the folks you talked to. So I may give you a call about that if you're still looking for more folks. There's a couple companies we talked to. Had to furlough folks out. So great. So why don't we do a check here for a second? Does anybody in the audience have any questions? If you want to throw it in the chat, Monica, let me know if anybody has any questions.
We don't have questions yet.
Not right now? All right. So
Not yet.
we'll keep on going. So what are some of the tools you can use to increase sales velocity? Well, first and foremost, having good data is really important. And a lot of companies struggle with having complete data and information about their customers. And there are a number of great tools. You know, I think we all know Zoom Info is probably one of the best if you're doing both outbound calling and email. Not only because they have a lot of data, but because the data is accurate, and they've combined a number of different tools through acquisition the last few years. So they have really a data intelligence platform. There are other tools out there that are that can help out, and there's different data sets and things like that depending on the industry. But having great data with all the campaigns we worked on, Connect Leader and 3 other companies, data accuracy and completeness is almost always the #1 factor if the program's going to be successful. If you're doing outbound calling and you know, making those manual calls and talking to all the leaving voicemails and everything is a tough process. If you're making you know, 50 calls a day and you want to get 10 times the sales, it's going to be pretty hard for you to make 500 calls a day. But there are tools out there that can help you do that. And they work, and you get a lot more conversations, and it makes you feel better too, because if you spend all day making 50 dials and you talk to one person, if you're lucky, it can get pretty tough to deal with. So if you use one of these sales acceleration tools, they can get you usually 8 to 10 conversations in an hour. Some people will do 1 hour at a time. Some companies suggest doing, using it all day long. Depends on how much data you have. You need a lot of data to support some of these high-end tools, and you need to have the people trained who can deal with that speed. But the nice thing with the outbound dialing tools is that your own salespeople are doing the sales. So if you have a technical product, sometimes we've had software companies who've outsourced their lead generation process, and they complain about the quality of appointments and leads that are set up, and you want your own people to do it. If you're medical product or something that's scientific product that's real technical, this is a tool that can help your salespeople do more. Automating your sales emails, that's another tool that's out there. There's a number of tools on the market that do that. You can send out multiple emails from your own Gmail or Outlook account, so it looks like they're coming from you, and that can help you reach a lot more people and generate more activity. And automating your social selling, using LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, depending on the market you're in. There are a number of tools out there that can help you automate the process and make that easier for you. And if you do it right, people aren't aware that it's a software tool that's sending them out, right? You write your emails and your email messages correctly. People will just see, like, wow, that guy's spending lots of time on social selling. So
Ken, there is one question that's in the chat on sales velocity, and that is why include deal value in the formula, right? How does that play into the equation?
Well, it's that it's the size of the deals is important for the total revenue, and maybe you can explain a little bit more.
It'd be kind of fun to play around with that equation, I think, right? I think it'll make more sense when you can plug in and say, in fact, I took a screenshot because I want to go play around with that after the call, right? Sales velocity. So let's say you've got 10 opportunities at $10,000 each and you close 30% and your sales cycle's 4 weeks. That's going to give you one number in sales velocity. Now let's say you've got 100 opportunities at $10,000 each, right? Change each part of the variable and you'll figure out what the sales velocity is. You know, I have one guy on my team who's closed about 12 deals in 3 months.
Right.
I have another person who hasn't even created 12 opportunities in 3 months, but his deal size is far bigger. So, you know, it's an interesting equation, and what's good, right? When it comes to sales velocity, I don't think there's one right answer. There's a, how do we directionally move it in a way that the sales velocity is faster, right?
Right.
Maybe in a big account, it might be if I can shave a month off a 6-month sales cycle, well, that helps on my inventory turns, just like in supply chain management, right? My deals per year. So
yeah,
I think the best way to do this is play around with the model and plug some numbers in and see what you come up with your sales velocity, and then figure out where the levers are, right? Can I add more opportunities? Can I increase the deal size? Can I increase the win rate? Can I reduce the sales cycle time? Those are all your levers to make the sales velocity faster.
Right. And that length of sales, like I said, is the most important factor. So how long it's taking you to close those deals.
Ken, if I may add something,
Sure.
one thing that I've seen in a Harvard Business Review study, in terms of how you could pivot during a crisis, one of the advices to increase sales velocity was to decrease this deal size. So basically what people could do is they can get out offerings that are lower in value or cheaper just as an entry point. And this advice I've seen across the board these days, and then maybe do some upsell once you are in the account. But I think that the deal value is very important with sales velocity. As you both mentioned, the bigger the deal, it's probably going to be longer sales cycles and so on. The smaller the deal, of course, you're going to have a much faster or let's say the velocity will be a factor of 10 if the deal is smaller.
Very, very good point. You know, that's dead on. There's a company that's putting out a blog post about 50 different outsourced lead gen companies. And so they sent me an email and said, hey, would you like to post something about why you're different? Well, they gave me the list of how everyone else is different. So it's kind of nice to be able to see what they said first, and then I could correspondingly respond. But what I saw in 90% of cases with outsourced companies is, hey, instead of $12,000 a month for a head count, what if we charge $5,000 and then tie a bunch of the, tie success to the campaign? Right. So I saw in some cases, they completely knocked the 12,000 to zero and said, hey, just pay us $500 a meeting. So really good point that the deal size can, if you can figure out a way to still be profitable or perhaps cover your costs and then make the upside in success fees kind of a situation. So,
right. So the key is kind of bridging the gap, right? The V in the economy right now is like keep things going and keep the activity going, not wait for the end and say, well, we're going to wait for it to happen. Well, if everybody waits, it's not going to happen. That's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So keeping things going and actively selling is an important part of the process at this stage. Also, you know, if you're doing it and your competitors aren't, it's a great time to take advantage of this lag time also, because when the budgets are restored, you're going to be at the top of the list, right? You're the person that you're going to have top of mind. And part of the automated sales, email, and outbound dialing and leaving voicemails is just as much about branding, both personally, you as a salesperson, as well as your organization. I attended a session on email by a company called World Data at HubSpot inbound conference last year. And he talked about the number of emails going out that are landing in your inboxes. And he showed one example of like 40 emails from Land's End that was in his inbox. And the point he's trying to make is like, they're not expecting you to be clicking or opening every email. They want you to see their brand in your inbox. It's just something to think about as, you know, the activity goes on. And there really isn't a big increase in spam or opt-outs as you increase the volume of emails. So if you are going to automate your process, you know, it's okay if you send 2 or 3 times a week. If you do see your opt-out rate starting to bump up, and usually it runs at less than 0.5%, you can always make an adjustment. But for the most part, that's not why people are opting out. So just something on the marketing side to think of. So I just want to wrap up this slide here. And we mentioned, you know, some of the different tools that are out there, but to make them work well together, having them as a single platform certainly helps. And there's a number of products that bring these tools together and allow you to send multiple types of messages. You know, part of, I think one of the message types I didn't mention here was messaging. And depending on your business, whether in your country's regulations, you know, sending messages, sending social media, sending emails, making phone calls, right? It's all part of the communications process, and some people respond to different channels better than others. So having a sales sequencing or sales engagement product allows you to program that so that you're not always spending every day sending those messages out. And you can, you know, send an email out, and then 3 days later, you know, make a phone call, a task to make a phone call and send a text message, and then, you know, do some social media, and you can program that so you don't have to worry about that part of the process. The automation will take care of it. You know, there's statistics in the inside sales development world that that you think about, and I think a lot of people who don't subscribe to some of these programs. The Bridge Group is it's a consulting group that does all kinds of great research, and they talk about the number of times it takes to contact somebody. And if you're trying to reach a senior level sales and marketing person, it can take you 7 to 10 contacts to get one conversation. If you're trying to reach a C-level person, a CEO or CMO, that could be 20 times, all right? So not too many people, if you're trying to go after C-level business, can manually do that. You need some sort of automation to get there. But the other big factor is, who are the people you're going for, and how are you going to get to them, and how can you make that process more intelligent? And that's where the artificial intelligence comes in. And there's a lot of great technology. So Chad's going to chat about that in a minute. So like I mentioned at the beginning, I just wanted to do a little bit of terminology here so we're on the same page. And talk about the difference between marketing automation and sales engagement. So with marketing automation, you're talking about generating qualified leads, right? Bringing the folks to your website, getting them to sign up, somehow raising their hand, right? The sales engagement, the process, you know, the goal is closing deals, right? Making that money. The email style is different also. So marketing automation is typically a branded template with images and logos and that fun, you know, opt-out information at the bottom. Where sales engagement emails are personal, coming from your Gmail or your Outlook account. Email type, Again, marketing automation is typically one-to-many. You're sending out a message to your newsletter subscription list or your outbound list. Where sales engagement is a one-to-one conversation. So you're reaching out to one person at a time.
Ken, the other thing to point out here is that there's a few line items where if I had an arrow or if I could move on the screen from right to left, right? Let's just imagine sales engagement, traditionally having run 100-person inside sales teams. I got frustrated as a sales leader, and you walk around and, management by wandering around is what we called it in our MBA program.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting over someone's shoulder and you're like, okay, show me what you've done this morning. Oh yeah, look, I sent 40 emails. Oh, okay, good. Let me see the personalization that you did on the one-to-one personalization. And they're like, oh, well, I was really busy today. I just hit send all.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think a large percent, when I went around and did the stopwatch and management by wandering around, 94% of all sales emails were not personalized.
Right.
They're set it and forget it. And so in that case, I'd rather move that one where it says one-to-one over to the one-to-many lot and say one-to-many, comma, one-to-one under marketing automation, because I'd rather empower someone like Ken to create the persona-based email tied to the right people and send it on behalf of my seller so that they don't have to come up with all kinds of excuses why they can't talk on the telephone. Right.
So
and then they just hit the send all button anyway.
Yep. So that's one of the things. That's one of the things we did in marketing, and we continue to do, is to create those emails with templates, right? So giving the salesperson a template that he can personalize, or that if you're using automation, will personalize it for you based on the data that you have, and that that brings up another factor: data, right? If you don't have somebody's correct title or function, or what they're doing, or how they're selling, whatever that information you want to personalize, if that's not in your CRM, you're going to say, hi Joe, at X company or something like that, right? I mean, that's a really simplified example, but having that information is important. But right, so marketing functions can definitely help with those emails. But I also found, now I did something, I did the marketing by looking over shoulder. One of the first things I did when I went to work at ConnectLate, when I first started ConnectLate, I was sitting in an office by myself with a bunch of developers. That had zero value to me. We had an office change. Our office was way too small, but I was able to get a cube on the floor with the sales team. And that changed my whole outlook and my whole experience, because all the messaging I needed, all the objections that the salespeople are getting, all the benefits that they were using in the sales, I could hear while I was working and doing my writing and doing whatever I was doing. And I could get the salespeople say, hey, which one of those messages works best? Or when do you use that message? And, almost all my blogs came from the sales team. All of the, case studies came from them. And it also, from a marketer standpoint, really helps you to get to know the sales process. So if you're a consultant, for instance, as a marketing agency, you're usually hired by the director of marketing. If the first thing you ask is not to let you speak to the salespeople or the director of sales and talk to customers, talk to sales folks, then you're not doing your job. So you definitely, marketing has to align with sales, and that's a great example. Thanks, Chad. So just moving on quickly here. So, what cycle or stage, is marketing used typically at what we call the top of the funnel, or that marketing section in the flywheel, right? And sales engagement is usually used, once that lead is qualified and the salesperson has accepted it, right? We call it sales accepted lead, and they're taking it to close, right? So we've had that handshake, that handoff. And now you've got those sales engagement. Now, sometimes those folks will still continue to receive marketing emails. It depends on your organization. Or other times the salespeople say, stop sending them those promotional emails. I wanted them just to receive my own emails. So a good reason to kind of switch from that marketing process over to the sales process at that time. The voice and tone of the email, how it's coming. This is where we kind of, Chad, you probably had this with your marketing folks, right? The marketing people always kind of have this corporate tone to it, and they're talking about companies and they're talking about product features and stuff like that. Well, salespeople don't talk that way, right? How you doing? You know, when are you going to buy? Right? So that's important, that when you write the sales emails for the sales engagement process, that you're talking with the sales reps to kind of get their tone and how they want it. And I actually have been doing that with a client recently, and kind of said, the salesperson was like, yeah, let me write it in a more personal manner, and let's not use the fancy template anymore. And boy, the engagement tour emails were fantastic. It just like jumped off the, matter of fact, I sent one out this morning before the session, and she got a response immediately. Like within 5 minutes, the email went out. She got somebody raising their hand. So,
you know, what's amazing, we hired a CMO earlier in May, and we spent 3.5 hours within the first week, one evening, where he interviewed me, very, very deep questions. And it was, he actually teased out more about the business pain than I even knew I had in my head, right? Asking, hey, what's going on with CROs in the world today? If they're a seed round or Series A, what's going on with them? And I'm able to answer those questions because I talk to a lot of them all the time.
Right.
And it's, look, the average time and tenure is 12 to 18 months for a CRO. If I get let go as CRO, what other job is out there for me? There's 39 million people unemployed in America right now.
Yeah.
So I got to, you know, there's that piece. Then there's the, well, I really want to make sure that all my people stay because I care about people, right? I'm a leader of people. So how do I make sure the pipeline's big? So when you're in the marketing side, I would actually encourage you to be the instigator of asking the sales team for things that they didn't even think about, to tease out what's the business problem, what's the emotion of that buyer if they feel these certain things, because people buy on emotion, not on analytical thinking. So if you can get down to the core emotional concept and then build whether it's a marketing communication or a sales one-to-one, but if it's all coming from that same place of, hey, here's what you're likely feeling in your role in these times, then that'll help you get a massive engagement and conversion rates go up.
Great. Sounds good. So just wrapping this up. So, you know, channels are similar for both marketing automation and sales engagement. I guess the one channel that you have in sales that you usually wouldn't use in marketing is the outbound dialing, because the phone is still one of the most effective tools to get a hold of folks. I think you see, you know, for a while, right? Inside sales was great at, you know, dialing is dead, but that's really never been the factor. Matter of fact, you know, inbound marketing, from what I've seen, generates about 40% of qualified leads for your organization. So your salespeople and your sales development team are still really important in doing that outreach and generating those relationships on their own too. And then integrations is an important part of these processes. For automation, it's really critical that your platforms are talking to each other, that you have two-way communications between them, and that everything is working properly, because any breakdown in any of these integrations can really kill your productivity, and especially with automation. So some things to look at there.
Ken, there's one question over here that in Europe, GDPR is obviously a bigger factor than other parts of the world. And so the question is, when it comes to marketing automation, it's difficult sending branded emails to too many customers in a cold market because GDPR regulations. What's your view on this topic? I've got an opinion. What are your thoughts in terms of GDPR in Europe and email?
Yeah, well, there's, you know, one of the things when I was working on this presentation, it was originally going to be more focused on outbound dialing. And then I also recalled that European regulations on making business phone calls is also different than the US. And so that's why I kind of pivoted and made it focus more on engagement. But I think you have to look at making those contacts in whatever works best within your regulatory environment. I know in the United States, there's a rule about having a business relationship. And I know with GDPR, and there's actually GDPR in the California Privacy Act is pretty much taken on the same criteria, is that you have to get that permission to have that conversation. So you have to find ways to get those folks to come in. And that's where your social marketing and your digital advertising and your webinars and things like that are really important to create that first part of the relationship.
Yeah.
That will then allow you to do more of the outbound work. So especially, yeah, go ahead.
I met with SAP about a year ago, and they were putting a big push for social outreach because of GDPR. And so it's obviously different if you're going through a LinkedIn connection and sending an in-mail.
Right.
So what we've seen in deploying over 150 customers across data, digital, dials, phone, every channel you can imagine, digital paid ads, we do everything. The social outreach is getting about a 10 to 12% reply rate to a connection and a sequence or an in-mail, where email generally gets a 1 to 3% reply rate. And, half of the 1 to 3 is take me off your list.
Right.
So getting a 10% reply rate on 1,000 to 2,000 connection requests per month, you might get a 30% connection rate. So let's say you send out 1,000 requests to connect, 300 will connect. And of the 300, 10% will reply. So you can get between 30 and 60 responses. The trick when you move from email to social or any channel, I've heard a guy named Josh Braun speak live, and he's brilliant. He talks about making deposits. So he says, give 8 deposits before you ever ask for a withdrawal. Right? Think about going to the ATM. If you have $0 in the ATM, you can't go in and say, I need $300. There's 0 in there. So you have to make a deposit. So think of that as, hey, Ken, noticed your role as, co-founder of Peak Solutions. I suspect that in these times of COVID, your pipeline's probably down like other people. Check out this top 3 webinar on how to build your pipeline. That's a deposit. I just gave you something of value. The next week, you get another message. Hey, I thought you might be interested in this quick ROI calculator for sales velocity. It's a web form. Check it out. I'm not asking you, let's meet for 10 minutes if you'd like to buy something. I'm making $20 to $50 deposits 4, 5, 6 times in a row. And guess what? By number 3 or 4, you've given me that much value. I'm going to be like, who's this Ken dude? I need to meet with him. Right?
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. And if you receive those first response emails that are selling you right off the bat, you're shining them out whether they're a valuable service or not. So it's important. I think social, especially, it's even more important.
Yeah. Here's another question, and this is perfect because we've got a new program coming out in June, maybe July. Which course or academy would you follow to learn more sales techniques? We are launching, and you guys are welcome to join and contribute, salesclass.ai. It's in partnership with Selling Power Magazine, and we are going to be the Netflix for sales content. We're going to be doing both on-demand and live classes, and it's going to be compartmentalized in courses, very, very low cost to join, like $9.99 a month kind of a thing. High value, high impact. So
that's great.
Expect to see a ton of content coming out in the very near term.
Yeah, and there's some organizations. I mean, the AAISP, which Chad, you've been really active for a long time, also has a great certification training program too. I think the cost is a little bit more, but again, depending on the type of training you're looking for, they're a great resource too. So great, appreciate it. Well, I think we are ready for the handoff. So as you can tell, Chad has lots of great experience and lots of great information, and he literally wrote the book on AI for sales. So I am going to hand this off and stop my screen share and let Chad pick up the program here.
Perfect. My favorite picture, I went to a magic show. So when I was a kid, I used to be into magic. And so I went to see Penn and Teller. And after the show, I went up to both of them and I said, hey, would you mind like holding this up to your face And, you know, Teller, who doesn't really talk, he was like, okay. And then he looked at the book. He was like, what am I doing? And he took a picture. And then I went to Penn, the really tall guy in the TV show, the magician. And he's like, Teller, he's an idiot. I'm not going to do it just because Teller did it. So that was kind of funny. Good Vegas trip. We're going to dig into 3 AI for sales plays that can 5X your pipeline. You know, a lot of companies are facing headwinds right now. So being able to do more with less is more important than ever. We have customers who come to us and say, hey, we just had a 38% reduction in staff. Q2's light, and we need to make up our sales in Q3 and Q4 with a 38% lower staff and a 50% reduction in sales budget and marketing budget. Holy cow, how do I do that, right? I'm now sailing into the wind. Well, you have to tack, right? If you've ever been on a sailboat, you tack. And so I'm going to give you 3 plays today that I think can help you influence the way that you build funnels. So I did this Google search the other day. I thought this was kind of funny. I just typed in AI for athletes. So I want you to start thinking about, you know, after I clicked the button, I ended up going to athletes.ai. And guess what? There is AI to help you improve your tennis game, your cricket game, your table tennis. There's golf, there's football, there's everything you can imagine. So AI has permeated a lot of different sports. And so if you click on their, you know, pricing page, they've even got a free trial offer. So you can upload 2 hours of video of your form and it'll tell you how well you're doing or not. So just get in the mindset of, can AI help me? Remember, delightfully human. That's going to be the new ScaleX tagline. Can this technology help me be more delightfully human than I already am? And in sports, it certainly can. I'm a big skier. So there's a new technology called Carve. You can put it on your boot and you can ski down the mountain. It'll tell you how good you're edging, how your balance is, your pressure, all kinds of interesting information. And so why spend money on a coach if you can buy one of these for a couple $100 and now you've got a coach always on monitoring and tracking your every move on the ski slope. So it's kind of interesting. I just bought one of these, my new Garmin watch, a couple weeks ago. And about a week into my watch wearing experience, it said, congratulations, you've just done 5,872 steps or something. I was like, I didn't even set that goal. Well, apparently it was tracking my average. And the AI helps me to become a better human, right? Because it tracks my average. I can compete against other people, my heart rate. This was the day that I built the presentation. I apparently lost a little bit of sleep that night. So 5 hours, I guess that's a lesson learned with preparing for talks. But there's 2 podcasts that I've seen, both mine and Victor Antonio. So if you're interested and curious in where AI is headed, look, Elon Musk talks about it. He says, if you have a phone that's a smartphone, well, then you're plugged into the AI matrix already. So it's important to understand where all this is going and the power that you can get from it. If you just Google AI for Sales podcast, you'll find AI in sales and AI for sales. Both are very cool. I do about 2 webinars a week, and then I push it out to the podcast. Okay, so we're going to cover 3 areas: data, a data playbook, a digital playbook, and a dials playbook. And I think you probably haven't heard of any of these. So obviously data maps to top of funnel, digital is around email and social outreach, and then dialing is a little further down the funnel. How do I improve the quality of the conversations of my sales team? So when it comes to data, when the crisis first hit and everybody moved to their home, we did a couple of tests and we called 100 people and we found out how many dials would it take to get a single phone conversation with someone at a main switchboard. So if I call Boeing and it says press 1 for this person and 2 for that person, it took us 59 dials to talk to one VP level person. Traditionally, it takes 20 to 25. So the crisis made it twice as hard, if not 2.5 times harder. And then what surprised us is that when we called the direct dial number, so if I called Loredana at her office directly, guess what? maybe Loredana's working from home for the last 8 weeks. And maybe that direct dial number, because so many people have traditional phone systems, it doesn't auto forward to their cell phone. It's not a Ring Central or a Zoom phone, right? Those can be set up to auto forward. So early in the crisis, we found that it was hard, 6 to 7 times harder to reach people. 73. Now, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, right in the middle of everything, right? Everyone in the world is quarantined to their home. And we used work mobile numbers from a company called Sales Intel. And it only took us 10 dials to get one phone conversation with CEOs and VPs. So if you've, to Ken's point earlier, we only have a certain number of hours per day. If you can physically only make 50 dials, would you rather talk to one person by calling office numbers, or would you rather talk to 5? I'll take 5, right? So that's a easy to use hack. And then to Ken's earlier point, Connect Leader, Connect and Sell, Monster Connect, Orem is another one. Our company represents all of those dialing applications. So we kind of, if you said, look, I need to use an agent assisted dialer, which one should I use? Because we buy so many millions of dials from these different providers, we could help you figure out which one's the best for you. And now you can say, so imagine a 10-to-1 dial to connect. And now imagine taking your dials from 50 in a day to 500 in a day, right? Now you're going to talk to 50 people per day instead of talking to the normal 1 or 2. If that doesn't move the needle, I don't know what does, right? You will sell more by talking to more people. Okay, so that's the first one. Any questions on the dialing, Loredana or Ken? If you see something in the chat, I'm not seeing it right now in full screen. Let me know if there's any questions and we can pop those in between sections. All good?
Not yet. We're fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so digital, let's move into this next play. What if you could convert 181 times better by making this play? It's totally possible. It's powered by artificial intelligence. So traditionally, ScaleX has been around 2.5 years. Our normal model is, let me pull you a lead list. Let me help you with event follow-up. Let me do an email campaign. Let me do some LinkedIn for you. Follow up on your trade show leads. Let's do some paid search. So I do everything over here on this left side of the Salesforce report that they put out a couple years ago. And so that's fine. But now look over here on the right. What's the best thing you could do? The best thing you could do is ask somebody that you know, or maybe they know you or know of you. Ask somebody for an introduction to another person that they are a trusted advisor with. So if I went to Ken right now and I said, Ken, I see you're in the Northeast and you're connected to the VP of sales from HubSpot, and you're connected to Loredana, who helps European companies come to the US. Would you mind making an introduction? Because I think ScaleX could really add some value. Ken's going to say, yeah, sure, Chad, I know you. And send me an email. Let me know what you want me to say to Loredana, or what do you want me to say to the VP of sales at HubSpot? And so traditionally you had to hire a human to go in and look at all of the connections. So let's say I have 18,000 connections on LinkedIn. I only know 20% of all of them. But for every 1,000 connections that you have on LinkedIn, that means you have 1 million to 1.4 million second degree connections. So just like if you've ever heard of Kevin Bacon, I don't know, 7 degrees of separation, 6 degrees of separation, whatever that is. Somebody knows somebody who could change your world and get you into a very large account. Traditionally, by doing that manually, by researching, let's see who Loredana is connected to, that would take so much time and energy that you would just hit the tip of the iceberg. What AI allows you to do is really look at the big data. So here's your traditional path. You try to barrage these poor people at Adidas and Tesla and Dell. Hey, could you take a meeting with me for 15 minutes? I see you downloaded a white paper. Or worse yet, hey, I was asked by my boss to set up a meeting so we could sell you something, right? Cheesy, lame approaches at a very low percent rate. Or you could say, let's see who fills in this spot. Let's find Ken, Loredana, Greg Carson, Adina, Eves. I mean, let's find the people in our networks or one step removed who could make an introduction to those people. So we prioritize the list of accounts. Let's say you have 300 prospects that you want to get into. You build a list of the 300 prospects, you click go, the AI can run an analysis across millions of people within 7 to 12 minutes. So what would normally take literally years, and by the time you're done with the analysis, oh shoot, 30% of those people no longer work with the company that they were when you were doing the research. So you let the AI do the research, snap the chalk, figure out who is connected to who. And I use the word wrong. Whom, who, I don't know. I was never good at English. Inam is connected to Joe, Ben, and Amanda. So guess what? His relationship with those people is off the charts. This person, Bronchi, is only 2 bars. So his level of connection to Elizabeth and Mike are not quite as good as Inam's connection to these 3. And then what's my connection level with Inam? So we've got this whole process that lets us classify all our connections, then understand their level of strength to their prospects. And then it's simple as this. And all this, by the way, is usually done from the time customer signs a contract to 3 days later. We're now sending messages at the hundreds to say, hey, Scott, hey, Loredana, hey, Ken, I hope this email finds you well. I see you're connected to Doug at Charles Schwab. I could use your help with an introduction. My VP of sales and I are working with cool companies that are like Schwab, and we think we could add some value. So it's just you're tacking into the wind, and you're not going head into the headwinds by going through referral partners and hiring. It's basically hiring hundreds of virtual BDRs that have better connections than you do, rather than trying to hire an entry-level person and call and fumble around in a cold call. Right? So that's sort of playbook number 2. The last piece is, and this is what the network looks like, right? No human could ever go in and do all that in an Excel spreadsheet and book meetings upon meetings. Look at the open rate, 88% open rate. Have you ever seen a marketing campaign get an 88% open rate? How about this? 38% reply rate? No, but these are my contacts, right? Ken, would you be willing to? He's going to see Chad Burmeister. He's going to open it 90% of the time, and 38% of the time he's going to go, okay, Chad, maybe 60%, they just are busy and it just falls by the wayside. So it's hugely valuable. The last play is around dials. So we've talked about agent dialing. We've talked about the data and the dial to connect rates. This is something that you've never seen before. And I want to play a short video for you. In fact, when I shared, I may want to stop share for 1 sec and reshare and optimize. Yeah, okay, watch this. This is going to be good. I'm going to optimize for the video play here. Speaking of AI, Zoom's a pretty smart technology. So check this out. This should play through your computer speakers.
So tell me, what got you interested in our solution to start with? Interesting. It sounds like you're saying this product might actually be a good fit for you. Is that right?
Balto's Smart Checklist helps reps execute the key milestones that drive successful calls. By always keeping reps on track, managers know that conversations are carried out effectively and no calls slip through the cracks. When the rep hears the objection like, "It's too expensive," Balto identifies the objection and instantly provides the rep a successful rebuttal.
Let's see if we can find an option that works with your budget. Is there a particular price point you're targeting for this purchase?
By providing reps with instant, highly targeted suggestions throughout the call, Balto saves calls before it's too late.
Hey, I totally get it. I totally understand. I'm just like that too.
When the rep gets nervous and starts talking too much, Balto hears it and reminds him to pause and let the other person talk.
Could you elaborate on that?
Balto gets rid of the bad habits that lose calls and replaces them with highly effective habits that close calls. With Balto, leadership can easily identify what's working and what's not, and then instantly push the winning strategies live across the entire team. Grow your business by empowering your people to make the most of every conversation.
So think about what that means for a seller or for a leader. If you're in marketing and you A/B test and the subject line, a shorter subject line gets a better open and reply rate, well, that's a data-driven decision as a marketer. In sales, traditionally, it's a black box, right? The person in the middle of this screen and on the far side and this person closest to us, they could all have very different close rates, styles, talk tracks. And there's this little thing called drift. You teach a human how to do something, just like playing golf. And within a couple of weeks, if you don't continue to work on your golf swing, it's going to get bad again. You're going to naturally go back to your bad habits. Same thing happens in phone conversations. If I can serve up what you just saw on the screen there and, be a AI augmentation on what the reps should or shouldn't be saying, how to handle objections. Call centers have been doing this for inbound for a long time. Outbound is a very, very new skill set and muscle. And I think you'll start seeing that companies put real-time call conversation and coaching. We're just getting started. This is a business partner of ours called Balto Software. It costs about $150 a month for a user. But if I can increase the conversion rate from first call to meeting, and then from meeting to pipe and pipe to close, each of those has a slightly different set of talk tracks, then what if I can increase sales by 33% or 50% or 100%? Now you can save folks who, maybe 2/3 of the people on this desk just wouldn't have cut it. Maybe the VP of sales says, look, you got 3 months to make it or not. And so they have a very high churn rate. Imagine if all of them had the call guide of the best possible way to sell. You're going to see an increase in sales and keep more people and make the world a better place. So that's what I wanted to cover with you today. I think a lot of people think of AI as a robot taking over the world, but in fact, AI can be a very helpful process that makes us more delightfully human than we've ever been before. So I appreciate everyone's time, and I think we're probably open it up for questions.
All right. Chad, that was great. Hey, I had a quick question on that Balto. How does it actually learn as far as coming up with those suggestions?
Yeah, the AI is only as smart as the human who programmed it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hire someone, let's say you have a team lead who was an SDR, became a team lead, and they say, let me do all this stuff. You could accelerate a very poor program. I had a webinar with Mark Hunter a while ago, and he was like, oh, all this is great, but this seems like a very entry level. This will only help entry level sellers. I said, Mark, you've been selling for like 25 or 30 years, right? He's like, okay, more than that. I'm like, okay, I've been selling for 25 years. You've been selling for more. Perfect. I said, how many times do you forget to ask the question, what would the impact be if you 5X'd your pipeline? Like the regular gap selling questions. We as sellers, we forget stuff. So I said, Mark, if we could program in the Mark Hunter philosophy and methodology, wouldn't you think that would be a benefit to people that are not just entry-level sellers? And he was just like, okay, you got me. So yeah, it's in the programmer. And that brings up an interesting topic, the ethics around AI, right? What would happen if somebody was lying and saying, yeah, we have a buy one, get one free right now. And you actually didn't. And then everyone sold that. And then the VP of sales would be like, wait a minute, who programmed the AI to say buy one, get one free? So it really, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and you got to make sure you have a good programmer on the back end of these things.
Yeah. I tell you, the applications have come a long way in a real short time. So it's pretty exciting, the tools that are available, and having not beyond just the script, right? I mean, the script is one thing, but actually being able to interactively understand the question and come up with good answers, right? And good, and I love the part where the sales rep is getting flustered and starts talking too much. How often does that happen when the salesperson just doesn't stop? And I know when I've got sales people calling me, that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is like, hey, you're supposed to be finding out information for me. You're not finding out what my problems are. It's like, give me a chance. But
yes. Yeah. So that's the pro, right? The glass is half full. This market caused companies to go out and look for solutions that can help you do more with less. And I think the result will be that, just like waiters going back to work right now, I heard that, hey, we only need 50% of the waiters. So guess what? They're hiring the top 50%. Right. I think the same thing happens in sales. Look, we're going to bring people back, but we need people who can close 2 million a year instead of 1 million now. And we're going to give you all the tools you need to close them. So productivity per head is going to go up, I think, at least 30 to 50% over the next 12 months on an average per head basis.
All right. Laura Donna, do we have any other questions?
We have quite a few questions, and it's amazing that people are actually were saying that they couldn't stay longer, but many stayed longer. So thanks everyone for staying after hours for the Q&A session. I'm seeing people rejoining, so that means that it's a really amazing session and they wanted to get back, so they needed to cancel stuff and get back to the conversation. We've got a few interesting questions. One is from Jennifer Nicholas from Enio. And the question is how to navigate contactless sales in complex technical industries where face-to-face relationship building has traditionally been critical to enabling sales. So again, how to navigate contactless sales. This is a broad question, but I'm sure that you have some thoughts on it.
I mean, my initial reaction to that question is web meetings. You know, I met with the head of inside sales for AFLAC. They've been around for 50 years, 70 years, a lot of years, right? Not a lot of years compared to Europe, but a lot of years in America. So a lot of years, 70 years, I think. And they haven't had an inside sales capability until COVID. And so they are now testing it in California, where they're going to be doing these conversations. They've given it to a person that I know that I think you would know as well, Ken, who knows exactly what they're doing. So they're going to show, and my cousin is an AFLAC field salesperson who meets face-to-face. I have a suspicion what's going to happen because I've lived through a lot of these transformations before. There's a certain cut line. Maybe it's a 10-person company, maybe it's 100-person, maybe it's 250. There's a certain size deal that can just be done better through video calls and not face-to-face. And so what they'll do is they'll re-optimize the entire AFLAC model and say, hey, instead of tens of thousands of resellers that are out there, we're going to go with 3,000 and we're going to have 10 per city instead of 100. And we're going to centralize everything, and we're going to do it because you can't use Balto software when I'm sitting there in person, but I can do it when I'm in a call like this. And now I'm augmented by AI and my conversion rate goes through the roof. So I think that's what's going to happen. A big move. Now, the way, if your business is being disrupted like that, then you want to look at what's the volume of deals that you do per year. So let's say it's 1,000. And 70% of those deals of the transactions are only 10% of the revenue. What you want to do is do as much as you can from a volume and high velocity perspective from an inside sales capacity, and then let the field reps close 80% of the revenue, but it's only 20 to 30% of the deals, right? You can figure out where that line needs to move over time. So I hope that addresses the question. Ken, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's, I think that's a great answer. I know that, for instance, Connect Leader did 95% of their sales on telephones without even video conferences. They were able to establish relationships through just a series of calls. And it's I think it's a cultural thing. I think Europe, there's it's still very much a one-to-one personal, go out to dinner, meet at conferences type of culture, which will make it more challenging for them. But I've seen, again, in the inside sales field in the US, a much more accepted use of telephone sales. And there's been that switch from field sales to inside sales for a number of years. So, I think it can be done. It's just a matter of kind of being able to make that change and try to deal with that culture difference.
Yeah, great point.
I also wanted to mention that, for example, I've seen quite a lot of networking good networking done these days through business communities. So I think that a step to get trust, because what Chad was mentioning earlier via LinkedIn is getting trust, getting endorsed by someone that knows you, to a second level connection. You can also do that, as you mentioned, in some business communities. You mentioned about inside sales. I'm involved also with EO, with Entrepreneurs Organization Network. I see a lot of business done through EO. So, and there's many business communities that you can use to do this type of sales. And some of them, you can even power yourself. So you can build a community around your business, and you can offer that value, you know, the 8 deposits at least in the bank, and then start withdrawing. But that means investing a bit in changing the mentality, changing the sales process, being open to new stuff, trying quite a lot of the technologies that we've heard about today. But I think there are many ways to change the model.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, in groups like this that Loredana has been involved with, sponsored, certainly is a great way. Getting me out of my little box and getting, you know, opening up and talking and meeting folks. And it's a great way to get to know people, to make those deposits and allow people to get to know you without having to necessarily be that pushy, you know, direct sales, you know, hit them up on social media right away type deal. It's a form of inbound content, really, but it's also having that natural making those connections one way or the other. And we all hope to, right? Loredana, you and I, we haven't met in person yet, right? We've been working together for over a year, and we haven't met in person. And I'm looking forward to going to Romania someday and meeting the team. But you know, you can develop those relationships very
well. And think about like Loom or Vidyard. There's different video tools. You know, my CMO, he's working with me for every section of the funnel, and mainly top of funnel, but building trust between me and many people by them seeing a vulnerable interview conversation where, you know, maybe he asks me a question that says, "Hey, Chad, why are you so passionate about sales?" And my answer would be, well, my first job out of college, I was fired in my first 9 months when I was there. And so for the last 25 years, I've written 4 sales books, and I've dedicated my entire life's work to helping to ensure that other people don't fail in their first sales job out of college. So imagine that clip for 60 seconds with a nice opener and a little bit of music playing in the background, and then a closeout. You know, all you got to do is Hollywoodize that a little bit. And now you can cut through the trust factor, because they're like, oh, I connect with that guy. Yeah, I was fired from Mark Hunter was fired. He goes, I was fired from 2 jobs out of college. I was like, wow, there's more than one of us. So by exposing your vulnerabilities, it actually causes people to lean into your message and say, oh, wow, I can trust that person because they're not afraid they're not hiding anything, right?
Nice. Thanks for sharing. That's really a very good example of how you can build relationships. So, I know that Juana is one of our colleagues and partners, and Juana shared this week in her short video series about transitioning to virtual sales. Like 77% of all B2B has transitioned already to virtual sales. So there's no way to escape that. I think that even if we will go back to direct face-to-face sales, we're still building now the basis for long-term virtual sales, and it's going to be just as important as any other type of sales that we've done before. So moving on to the next question, Mihai Mihailovic from Interactive Software is asking, which will be the biggest challenges for the sales professionals in the post-pandemic period? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest thing you can do to impact your sales is to make sure you have adequate pipeline to cover those sales. So Ken said it earlier, takes 10 times more sales activities. There's a partner of ours in New York that's called Bregal Sagemount, and this one person manages multiple portfolio companies that SageMount invests in. And they track it very closely, right? How many touches, like how many times does it take to screw in a light bulb, right? How many sales touches does it take to get a meeting? And he gave the exact number. From 2017 to 2020, it's 10 times more than it was 3 years ago. So you can either say, well, then I need to increase the target to go 10x more dials, conversations, emails, etc. Or you can say, well, we're going into the wind. Let's use other strategies like reference selling. So I think it's a combo of both. But I think you've got to address these things head on. And if you focus on pipeline, a lot of the sellers, so, you know, in thinking about who are the sellers who are in the seat, if you've been selling physically and building a relationship and that's your skill set and you've got the best muscle to do that of anyone, a good friend of mine, Steve Lepore, he's way better than me at that. Maybe I'm okay at it now, but it took a while. But, you know, he was really, really good at building a relationship. And now the world flips, and now inside sales and being able to run meetings like this is more important. You've got to be a modern seller, and there's about 6 or 8 different tools in the toolkit that will make you a modern seller. So don't just fold the hand and say, well, I'm a relationship seller and that was my way. You've really got to open up and join places like the AAISP. It's a global organization. They have chapter meetings all over. There's another one called the Enterprise Sales Forum. Lean into it, right? The world's changing. The good news is 10 to 20 years have been put into this. People know how to do it, and you can learn from other people.
Great, thank you, Chad. Ken, do you want to add anything here?
Oh, I think that's, I think Chad addressed that well. I think one of the things that Chad talked about that I've been learning more about is account-based selling and identifying who those targets are. If you don't know who your ideal customer is or who your buying personas are, then a lot of times you just end up spinning your wheels and trying to figure out which direction do you go. Focusing, finding that industry, finding that niche, especially if you're a consultant or agency that maybe you deal with a lot of different types of industries. Sometimes, you know, identifying that, but taking that focus and finding that 20% of your best opportunities in working the relationships, just like Chad mentioned, whether you use AI to reach out or if you have your connections, leverage your LinkedIn connections to get into those companies that you think that will really be beneficial to your business. I think is makes sense. It's just again, selling and working smarter and identifying and honing in, right? The 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your customers will give you 80% of your business. So why waste time on that other 80% and try to identify who that 20% is and go, you know,
the other part that makes me think of one more thing. Flip the funnel. I was on a web meeting with TK, who was the former CEO of ToutApp, and then he sold to Marketo, and then he sold Marketo to Adobe for billions of dollars. So he's a pretty credible source. Yeah. And he had a couple of customers on the call yesterday, in fact, and they came up with the idea of flipping the funnel to say, hey, if you're a current customer, who else do you know that could benefit from this, right? And so we've had some customers who've just said, look, we're just going to focus on our base and we're going to start there. And so they've right-sized their sales team to map to that, right? Which is just their customer base, and they're getting upsells, cross-sells, and referrals. I think most companies underutilize their network for referrals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks both for your input. Marcin from JLab Software asks, not necessarily connected to coronavirus crisis, but how to build a relationship with someone who doesn't respond to you. I think you answered that with the 8 deposits and the 1 withdrawal, but do you have any more thoughts on it?
Yeah, good perspective. There's another interesting guy, if you can check him out, Stu Heineck, Heineck, CHE, I think. He wrote a book called How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, and then a second book called Get the Meeting. He is a Wall Street cartoonist, Wall Street Journal cartoonist. And so he owns something like 3,500 Wall Street Journal cartoons, kind of like the one you saw from Ken today. Imagine sending that post, but instead of you change the thought bubbles to something that's cute and humorous for your buyer, and then it's a big white card and you FedEx it out, you UPS it out, whatever, DHL, and send it to the recipient. And then you call the recipient, hey, did you get that? He sees a 80 to 90% meeting acceptance rate by first sending a humorous card like that. And it's not asking for anything on the front of the card. It's just something that you might hang on your wall because you want to put the prospect's name in it, right? And it's fabulous. So I think be creative, use techniques like asking for the referral. If you're going direct, be super creative. That, you know, it's
not
hard.
always, yeah, and it's not always technology that works, right? I worked with a client, IT services company, and they sent out screen wipes to prospective customers, to the CEOs, and they would send out 20 to 30 every couple of weeks. And then their salespeople would follow up and say, hey, did you receive that to help you clean up your network? You know, something silly like that. But it worked for them. It was really low tech for a high tech company. And, you know, you can do those, you know, and it doesn't have to be fancy and expensive. You know, just using direct mail or other aspects that aren't as common anymore to get somebody's attention sometimes. But again, I think the referral and you know, and the other time too is if, you know, if they aren't responding, maybe they don't have a need or maybe they're not the right target, and, you know, keep building your pipeline. Keep, you know, the more you have, the less consequential, you know, those become after a while.
I'd also like to point out, Ken, that there's more and more focus on something that it's not new in our space, but it's coming back strong, which is account-based marketing. And account-based marketing and sales, it's all about understanding, you know, a certain account, what they care about, what's their priorities, what are the roles, and hunting down multiple roles that you may need to talk to at a certain company. I definitely recommend following the framework of ABM just to get in touch with someone, because one of the things that you could do is to use another entry point in that company and get a referral, for example, since you mentioned about referrals. So there's many ways to get a hold of someone. The main thing is to be focused and not to give up. I have shared in one daily video a couple of weeks ago, and I can send it to Marcin, specifically how many touches do you need to do to a certain person before they reply. You need to do anywhere between 7 to 13 touches on different channels before they would reply to you. So calling, emailing, sending messages via LinkedIn, following, and so on, before they hear from you. 50% of salespeople give up after the first interaction, about 70% after the second one. Only about 5% get to the 7th interaction, right? So I think that following a system and following a process is also key, on top of everything that you mentioned that I think is pure gold. So hopefully this will help Marcin get a hold of that person. But if not, maybe he can connect with us and we can figure out a referral. So
I'll make one last deposit in that demand base. One of the leaders in the ABM technology market sent me an email. I don't know if the promotion is still valid, of offering a free ABM Foundation certification and a free advanced certification. These classes normally cost, I think it's $390 each. So you're talking about almost $800 of value. It's a limited time, I think only to the end of July. I took the ABM Foundations course in an afternoon. It's, if you're already, familiar with marketing concepts, you'll find it's pretty straightforward. But I think it's a great way to just get introduced to the terminology and understand what it's all about. And all it is marketing, support, and strategic account selling. It's very simple. So if anybody's interested, you can leave me a chat. I'll see if I can dig up my email that they sent me with the code, and I'll send it off to you.
Thanks, Ken. That's really generous. Thank you. Jamie Armstrong from Soprano Design is asking, what are some innovative digital tactics to invest in to help increase B2B lead generation? We've mentioned quite a few in today's session, but do you have any other thoughts or ideas around this?
I'm working with my head of marketing on optimizing Facebook ads and Instagram ads right now. And so you can do an audience and a lookalike audience where traditional paid ads were one-to-many, right? Hey, I can just push it up there and whoever sees it, sees it. But in today's world, it's gotten pretty sophisticated where you can just upload a list of, here's the 3,000 people that are perfectly in my ICP, and it's worth it for me. We did a campaign in end of last year. I spent $420. I got 78,000 impressions and 400 clicks. And quite a lot of pipeline and revenue out of that for $400. So
nice.
I think, where I've always been a traditional sales leader, and partnering with a marketing leader has now become quite interesting, because I'm kind of learning how a lot of these companies I've worked for in the past, that's a big piece of the magic trick when it comes to growing a business. It's not just brute force and making phone calls and dialing into people, but it's creating trust through content and causing people to click a link, and then, you follow them from site to site. So if you're not doing that, I would highly encourage you to talk to Ken and Laura Donna about how to do that.
I know we're coming short on time, but I know that when I started at Connect Leader, Mark Lynch, who was the VP of Sales, who Mark and I are good friends, said that, we're calling all the time, but the leads we get from inbound from our website are the best leads. So even though they weren't having a whole big quantity, those people, the hand raisers are already in the process. And so, there's a value, and that's why HubSpot is done so well to attracting those people who are in the process and identifying them. And one last tip, HubSpot just announced some new account-based marketing features to the marketing platform. So everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon.
Interesting.
Yeah. So to restate what Chad was saying, we've just seen a return in an e-commerce project. I know they invested like $143 and they got $17,000 sales.
Wow.
So just Facebook ads. If you're doing it right, quite a lot of the few things that are available on the market can perform really well. I believe that there have been a lot of ideas through this conversation and through some of our previous sessions on marketing channels and sales tactics and highly converting sales tactics. So you can watch those. But just do the, I don't know, there's an expression in English, I think, do the grind. Is that right, Ken?
Yeah, it sounds
okay.
good.
Yeah, so I've seen many people just trying and abandoning and trying something else and abandoning. Just, pick each channel at a time, learn about it, optimize it, work it through really well, look at your industry benchmarks, try to reach those, then try to exceed those by optimizing it, and don't abandon things too quick. If they work for someone else, they will surely work for you. I see that there has been some interesting conversation in the chat pane as well. if, I don't know, do you have any more thoughts to share, Chad, Ken? Anybody else has another question?
No, I think we covered a lot today, and I want to thank everybody for joining us, and enjoyed these discussions and brought back some topics I hadn't discussed for a long time. So it's great. And Chad, thanks so much for joining us. It was awesome. Everything you shared with us, the technologies, everything in your sales tips. So thanks so much for joining us.
Every week we send out a deposit email. It's not a sales pitch. So if you want to go to, I just put it in the chat, scalex.ai/blog. There's a whole lot of podcasts that were recently converted and you can hear them. But we also have a newsletter that'll pop up. So you fill out the HubSpot newsletter form, and you'll get us every Saturday. It's either Saturday or Sunday. You'll get a newsletter of different AI for sales approaches. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah, please do follow Chad and Ken and myself. We're sharing content via LinkedIn as well. We will send out the links that Chad mentioned, and if you have resources for the business community, valuable content like the one from today, do reach out. We would love to provide you with a platform to share such content and information. It's been an amazing session. Thank you so much, Ken and Chad, for your time and for the very interesting contribution to this business community. And I hope that you will join our next sessions as well. Our next topic actually is on AI. It's going to be about how to use AI and how to optimize your business with AI. We've talked a lot about automation and AI recently, even in today's session. So it's going to be interesting to hear it from someone that's actually using it to optimize their product and how they got to this journey and what they use as technologies and so on. We will keep you posted. There's going to be an announcement next week, but the session is in 2 weeks. These sessions will be every other week now, just because we are preparing an amazing session on training session actually on lead generation and sales prospecting. And you will hear about that soon on our social media channels. If you have any other questions, reach out to us. Thanks again for your time. It's been amazing to see all of you stay for so long, and I hope you got a lot of value from Chad and Ken. Thanks again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Loredana. Appreciate it.
Thanks.